there, and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm your host, Park Howell, and today you're going to learn what a high-tech executive learned from Hollywood to successfully humanize his approach to selling complex cybersecurity services, and how you can use these same storytelling techniques to turn confusing messages into compelling communications. But first, I got to tell you about something that was pretty cool that happened about 2 weeks ago. You see, I was working with Amir and Riyad Nizam, the principals of Master Electronics, a very large electronics distributor here in Arizona. I was teaching the business of story techniques to more than 200 of their sales and marketing team during the Master Electronics Sales Revenue Kickoff event in Paradise Valley. And again, this was just a couple weeks ago. One of the themes that I underscored to them is that they can use the ABT Agile Narrative Framework to make all of their messages land right the first time. From crafting emails that actually trigger a response, to social posts that build your influence, to compelling landing pages that actually convert customers, to focusing your sales presentations, to making your long-form communications quickly connect. You can even use the ABT in your video stories, as Master Electronics Director of Sales, Christian Stanchu, put to the test. Christian didn't initially use it on a Master Electronics project, but actually something vastly more important. That was helping his daughter Sienna sell her Girl Scout cookies. Christian took Sienna through the first 20-minute module of the ABTs of Agile Communications quick online course, where she learned the primary structure of the and, but, therefore. She learned how the ABT framework leverages the three forces of story, which are agreement, contradiction, and consequence, and how our primal pattern-seeking, cause-and-effect, decision-making, limbic, buying brain loves this form of messaging because it makes your message clear and succinct and very easy for that brain to digest. Then the proud papa sent me Sienna's video, which I have promptly played for more than 1,000 leaders through trainings with Walmart Canada and Checker, which is a San Francisco-based high-tech firm that handles background checks and screenings for the largest global brands. I wanted to show these business leaders how effective the ABT is in all of their communications. Check it out for yourself. Here's how Sienna nails the primary ABT form.
Hello, my name is Sienna and I'm in Troop 42755. Girl Scouts is important to me because it teaches me many life skills. The money from cookie sales pays for camping trips, and I learned about sales and marketing. But to reach my goal, I would like to sell 400 boxes of cookies, which would go a long way towards funding many activities for my troop. Therefore, please consider either purchasing or donating a box or more and have it shipped or request Girl Scout delivery. Thank you.
Luckily, Sienna lives in the Pacific Northwest near my own mom, so I ordered a box of Girl Scout s'mores, tagalongs, and of course my favorite, Thin Mints, to be hand-delivered by Sienna to my soon-to-be 98-year-old mom who absolutely loves Girl Scout cookies. That's 3 more boxes of cookies towards Sienna's goal of selling 400 boxes. And as of this recording, I can see on her digital cookie store that she's nearly halfway there. So if you'd like to put this sweet messaging marvel to work for you or your team, shoot me a note to park@businessofstory.com. We can explore in-person training, virtual coaching, keynotes, or a hybrid business of story experience for your people. Plus, you can start right now, just like Sienna did, by taking the ABTs of Agile Communications quick online course. Check it out over at businessofstory.com/ABT and start putting this 3-word storytelling messaging marvel to work for you. As Sienna demonstrated with her amazing ABT, storytelling in business is all about humanizing your message so your audience can connect with you from their point of view, making them the center of your story. We underscore this idea of the power of humanizing your messages through storytelling with today's guest. He took what he learned about storytelling while working with Robert De Niro's Tribeca films, handling A-list Hollywood celebrities over a 5-year period, and applied it to the sales and marketing of his rapidly growing cybersecurity firm.
I learned through that experience and through realizing that all of these people, again, that I idolized were also just people, that if you can go into any sort of engagement with a client or with a prospect or even with a partner, any sort of business engagement, just be a person. Don't be a salesperson always and try to push something on them. Listen to them. Have conversations with them. Tell them a little bit about your background. It makes you not only, I think, a little bit more vulnerable, but it humanizes you.
Justin Rende has been thwarting bad online players with his cybersecurity expertise for years, even before working with De Niro and Tribeca. In 2015, Justin founded Rhymetec to focus exclusively on developing the most secure, simplified, and innovative cybersecurity solutions. He advises his clients to adopt cutting-edge technology before it becomes mainstream, resulting in the most secure and cost-effective technology that scales with the client's business. And as you'll hear, storytelling is a major part of his success in this very complex world of cybersecurity. So please welcome to the business of story, Justin Rende of Rhymetec Cybersecurity. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Happy to be here.
So we're going to be talking about an unusual subject for the business of story, and that's cybersecurity. But not just cybersecurity in and of its own right, but how do you storytell around something as really complex, confusing, obfuscating as cybersecurity? And that's what we're going to try and cover today. So glad you're with us to take us through this journey. But let's start with your backstory, Justin. How do you find yourself in this world to begin with?
Sure. I have a little bit of a crazy background. I'm based in New York City, and I moved there shortly after I graduated college in 2002. And I started working for some technical companies in cybersecurity while I was there. And I was in my young 20s and living in New York City, and I had a lot of friends that were doing cooler things, I think, than working in IT. And so at that point in time, when I was around 25, 26 years old, I wanted to do something that was more cool, or something that 20-year-olds want to do, and less interested in technology, and something that was more going to give me access to cool people and a cool New York lifestyle that I always imagined.
What were the cool things that your buddies were doing that were giving you FOMO?
Yeah, they were just like working in film, where they work with celebrities, or they were working in fashion, and they'd work on things like Fashion Week, or things like really kind of things that you would see in the press, or that you would envy people that kind of got to go to these sort of things when they were in New York City. Things that when I'm a 24-year-old would get me into the front of the line at a club in New York City that I wouldn't necessarily have that sort of access had I just been working in technology. So really a lot of film and fashion and sort of media-driven sort of work was what they were really kind of focused on. And it seemed much more exciting, I think, than doing, at that point in time, I was doing Microsoft licensing for big businesses. So I wanted something that I felt that I could work and really enjoy in the same way, and have the access and the excitement that my friends were getting through their jobs.
What did you study in college?
So I just studied business in college. So it was a pretty basic degree. I think when I was going to college, like a lot of people in college, they don't necessarily know what they want to do at that point in time. So I just got a business degree through college, and then left college, moved to New York City, and fell into sort of a sales role doing Microsoft licensing for big businesses. So working with larger companies and selling them licensing agreements to make sure that they were staying compliant with all of the Microsoft that they were using within their organization.
Well, heck, we all got to do that right out of college, right? We got to make ends meet, and we'll take that job to get us a little bit of experience. And so you're in the tech world working on Microsoft stuff. You're seeing all your buddies running around having fun in the glamorous fashion and movie industry. What did you do next?
So I ended up saying, okay, I don't mind what I'm doing in technology, but again, I'm seeing my friends, they're flying to film festivals, they're on the weekends, they're going to clubs with famous people and doing things that I'm like, oh man, this is such a great life and what I want to be in New York for. And so through my friends, I ended up, through their contacts and whatnot, I ended up getting a job working in film in New York City as well for a pretty prestigious film company in New York City.
Can you share who that company was?
Yeah, it was Tribeca Films. So it's one of the biggest film companies.
Yeah, so big dog.
Yeah, a big company here in New York City. So I ended up getting a job working for them. And then I was kind of flown into this world that my friends were in before, where it's like dealing with a lot of famous people and celebrities. And it did kind of elevate my personal life from that perspective. Your lives in New York, your personal and private lives are usually relatively tied together. And so I ended up getting this job where I was working with all of these amazing people and people that I'd see as a child, even growing up and idolizing them and thinking, oh, wow, I could never even imagine if I got
Who were some of these folks?
People. I mean, you would talk about like the people that run the festival. So there's Robert De Niro, who's a big celebrity. I had the chance to meet with Meryl Streep. There's Cameron Diaz. There's so many different celebrities. I can't even think of all of them that I met with throughout my time at Tribeca, but there were several of them, and it was great to kind of meet these people and see them and understand that they were also just people like myself.
Well, what was your job?
So I went there, of course, whenever anyone starts in the film industry, you just start as an assistant. That's kind of how everyone starts there, and it's a rough job. You get a lot of, it's different than I think other industries where you get a lot of scrutiny and there's a million people that want your job when you work in film. So it's getting coffee for people. It's a lot of playing into sometimes people's egos, doing a lot of stuff like that for them. And then after that, I was only doing that for a short period of time. And then I moved into this role where at the time, Tribeca Films was co-sponsoring a film festival in Doha, Qatar as well, the Doha Tribeca Film Festival. And so when they started that sponsorship, they moved me up into a role where I would actually be doing work in Doha for 6 months out of the year, kind of helping them build and produce that festival and frankly, managing their VIP relations. So I was responsible for getting celebrities to come to this festival. And then once they were there, I was responsible for their agendas and making sure that they were happy and that they had a good impression of the festival and that they really enjoyed their time there. And the same thing with New York as well. The difference is it's a lot easier to get a lot of celebrities to get on a plane and come to New York City from Los Angeles than it is to get a lot of celebrities to come on a plane from Los Angeles to Doha, Qatar. So it was a little bit more of a struggle to get them to come to Qatar, but we had a lot more money to be able to get them to come there. So it made it a little bit more enticing when you would send a private jet for them or something like that. They're happy to make that flight at that point in time.
So what is one of the craziest situations you found yourself in when working with some of these celebs?
Oh, there are so many. I mean, the one I like to use, and I don't want to use any names of the celebrities, but again, there's so many humbling moments when you work with them. Some of them are so amazing and so kind and warm, and then there's other celebrities that you work with that are not necessarily that. And I had some experiences. I remember I was one of the celebrities we were working with. They were staying in the Four Seasons in Doha, Qatar. And they expected us to basically take care of everything for them. So the celebrity wanted me to get their dress tailored and steam cleaned and all of these sort of things that weren't really kind of like what we did in terms of how we worked with them. And I explained to the celebrity that like, oh, this isn't something we typically would do, and I'll look into it, but I don't know that it's necessarily something we're going to be able to. And just the reaction you would get from someone that's screaming and yelling. And I actually did have that person say, I never thought this actually existed, but that person said, do you know who I am? Which I did, but I didn't actually think that was something that existed in the real world, that people actually said that to you. So yeah, I had a lot of interactions with these people that were I would say 75% of them were great and wonderful, because it makes you realize that they're human beings and they're wonderful people that just interact with you like anyone else would. And then there's a couple of them that are, they get upset about things that aren't necessarily such a big deal that you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, okay, your coffee isn't here right away. It's okay. It'll be here in 2 minutes. There's no reason that we need to freak out and scream about this. It'll be here and it's okay.
That thought, Justin, do you know who I am? Followed directly by, you'll never work in this business again, young man. Yep. I can just hear that right now.
I did also. So when I was working there were times where you would get, again, it's about ego, and you wouldn't do anything wrong, but they would get so upset, your boss's boss or someone, and they would, they would fire you. But then 20 minutes later, when you're fired, they would call you and say, get back into the office. Like, what are you doing? Why did you leave here? And you're like, well, because you fired me 20 minutes ago. I thought that was meant I was supposed to go home. But yeah, that happened a lot of times too. And it wasn't just me. That happened to so many people, where you just have to get used to, I think the stakes sometimes are so much higher in film. And so there's a lot more pressure on these people. And so they sometimes have outbursts of emotional reactions that they later regret having done that after they've calmed back down.
How long did you work in the film industry, and why did you leave it?
So I was in the film industry for about 5 years, and I was really doing a lot of going back and forth, spending 6 months in New York City, 6 months in Doha, Qatar, and then going back and forth. And that got tiring after a while. And I also realized I was pushing into my 30s at this point, and I was less about having a job that was cool and more about kind of something that was setting me up on a career path for success and to grow. And I wasn't as concerned about going out or hanging out with celebrities or not having to wait in line to get into a club on the weekends. I'm 30. I'm not going to clubs anymore. So it was really just about kind of setting myself back up for success. And I also realized that, again, I didn't go into film probably with the right intentions. I went in film for access and to feel cool. I wasn't a filmmaker. I wasn't someone that was overly passionate about film. I enjoy film by a lot, but I'm not overly passionate about it. And I would have potentially probably had to move to Los Angeles if that was the career path that I wanted to stay in. And I didn't really want to move to Los Angeles. Not that I don't like Los Angeles, but I don't want to live in Los Angeles and work in film. It just seems like it's a lot to take that on. So I decided that I wanted to go back into technology after deciding that film wasn't what I wanted to do. And I had that background. I knew it was stable. I knew that I enjoyed it. And again, I wasn't really looking for something that was going to give me access anymore. I was looking for more of a stable career and something that I could really build off of. And so I decided, that it was probably a good time for me to go back and work in tech at that point in time. And I did. Did
you go directly into cybersecurity, or what was your entree into it?
I had a pretty broad background in tech, doing Microsoft licensing, working with a lot of enterprise-sized companies. And I remember doing a lot of research saying, okay, I have a high-level understanding of most different areas of tech, cloud computing, cybersecurity, but I think it's hard to kind of hone in on or be like a generalist, a technology generalist, and I really need to hone in on one of those skill sets. And so I researched it, and I thought, what am I going to be the most passionate about, and which one's going to be the most stable and secure area within this industry? I researched it. Cybersecurity was the one that came up. I think this was in probably 2012, and I remember doing a lot of research into this and looking at all the money that was going to be poured into cybersecurity and all the things that were going to be changing with the industry over the next decade. And I said that I thought that was probably the most stable and interesting aspect of security for me. And so when I left the film company, I went to go work for another consulting company, kind of managing their cybersecurity program. And then I worked there for a few years before I ended up starting my own company.
So did your friends go, Justin, dude, what are you doing? You're leaving the glamorous world of film to go into cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, some of them had mixed feelings about it. But again, I was a different person than I was when I started working in film. Again, I looking back on it, I'm super happy that I went into film. I think a lot of the lessons I learned from that industry, it taught me really good work ethic. It taught me a lot of communication skills and how to deal with different types of people and managing that. So I'm happy about that experience. But when I decided to make that move into film, again, it wasn't for the right reasons. It wasn't because I wanted to produce documentaries or I wanted to do anything like that. I did it for access. And so I think at that point too, my friends have all gotten older too. And so their priorities also had shifted. Some of them remained in the sort of industries that they were passionate about, but they probably went into those industries with a level of passion that I didn't have for what they were actually doing versus the access and fun that I got out of that job.
Would it be fair to say when you were studying business in school and then came out and working, selling Microsoft licenses in the tech world and whatever, it maybe didn't have a lot of communications training? Because, I mean, in my world, when I go out and people you would think are well-versed in communications simply haven't had that training in the background. So number one, is that a truth? Did you feel that way? And number two, then you mentioned a lot of the communication skills you learned in the film industry. Mm-hmm. How did you apply those then now in your world in tech?
When I came out of school going into sort of this Microsoft licensing world, and I was selling primarily into large businesses, right? So, you talk about like large banks, large law firms, companies like that, primarily also based in New York City. And it didn't really that job didn't give me the opportunity to really improve or even understand my communication skills at that point. Selling into these larger companies is more of a transactional sell. It's not really a consultative sell. You're not working with these people and really doing a lot of communication and back and forth. And it's all about price and really like what you can provide them, which is a Microsoft license. So it didn't really allow me to kind of grow my communication skills. When I went to go work into film, like that's where I was exposed to such a diverse set of people and so many different types of people, so many different types of personalities, and so many people that I thought that I idolized my whole life that you would normally go up to and be super nervous to meet when you are actually getting the chance to meet a celebrity that you have idolized your entire life. And so I was able to kind of learn a lot about myself in that job and learn a lot about how to communicate with people in that job. It also gave me the confidence, I think, to really be able to communicate with most anyone, because I would go into a situation where I would go to meet a big deal celebrity and someone that I had really idolized or thought was going to be like this holier than thou type of person. And after sitting down with them and having conversations with them, I would be like, oh, they're just like me. They have problems. They have insecurities. They're a human being just like everyone else, and they're not any different. And so after really idolizing all of these folks and then getting a chance to meet them and work with them and understand them better, I realized that this isn't a generalization, but like there's no reason to idolize. These people are the same. They're the same as everybody else, and everyone is a human being, and everyone has their own issues and their own problems, and no one is really just like perfect. And so these people that you think of that are perfect, and when you realize that they're the same as every other person you know, it gave me the ability to then, after I left film and I started my own company, to have the confidence to go in and meet with other CEOs and to meet with other sort of high-level business people at that point in time in my career, and realize that they're just like me and that I shouldn't go into any of these sort of engagements or meeting these people being nervous or really being intimidated or anything like that, because they're just people, like just like the celebrities that I worked with, just like me, just like all of my friends. We're all the same, and so I shouldn't necessarily have the sort of intimidation when I have to meet with a lot of these people, which was great, because I don't know, having not gained that skill and that knowledge from working in film, I don't know if my company Rhymetec would be as successful, because I would probably be a little bit intimidated for a lot of these situations that I put myself into, or in a lot of these meetings or even speaking engagements that I wouldn't have necessarily had the confidence to do prior to working in film.
So that was the main personal skill that you found really developed, is building this internal confidence that you can sit across from anybody and help them, number one, understand, empathize with where they are, no matter who they are, and then help them get what they're looking for. Yeah.
And realizing that, again, I think that the changing point for me was, again, when I was sitting down and with a really big deal celebrity, and it was Robert De Niro. So I was sitting down with De Niro. It was just him and I in the office that one day, and we had a decent relationship. He knew who I was. I knew who he was, and there was no one else in the office that day. And he asked me if I wanted to go up to his office for a drink and like just have a scotch. I think it was right before Christmas or something, and so there was no one in the office. It was him and his assistant. And I remember going up there and being like, wow, if this would have happened to me 5 years ago, I would have been so intimidated and so nervous to go up there and have this conversation with this guy, this famous actor. But now I'm not. He's going to go upstairs. I'm going to talk about my life. He's going to talk about his life. And it's not something that I should be intimidated by. And so I think once you can sit down and have a conversation with someone like that, you can probably have a conversation with most people and feel less intimidated than you would be.
I had a similar experience when I was at Washington State University. We're talking like early 1980s, and I was on the Performing Arts Committee, and we would bring in all the concerts and the big time shows for Dad's Weekend and Mom's Weekend. And I mean, the Beach Boys came in, the Moody Blues. I had to drive up to Spokane and pick up their keyboardist and drummer and drive them down. And one of the funnest things I did, or most fun things I did, was I had to babysit Rodney Dangerfield for 2.5 hours to make sure he didn't get lost and or disappear from the bowels of the Beasley Performing Arts Coliseum at WSU. He had literally had to take a bus over from Seattle, his touring bus. He had a big show in downtown Seattle the night before. He walked in at about 8:30 in the morning, literally with a white robe on, black socks, and black slippers. Just like you would picture Rodney Dangerfield, bloody, bloodshot eyes. He came in, sat down. I offered him a cup of coffee, took it, and he and I sat there and chatted for 2.5 hours until the next babysitter came in. And I thought the same thing, Justin. I thought he's just a regular dude. He's kind of weird, kind of strange, very funny, but it was such a great time just to sit and chat with him. So on the storytelling side, now you were saying that your job with Microsoft licensing was much more transactional. You didn't have a lot of relationships going on there. So it's kind of a commoditized business. And, in this day and age, man, commodity is your fastest route down to the primordial muck of commoditization. I call it, meaning low price wins, which really erodes your margins, of course. So storytelling has to come into play, especially in the tech world, to humanize that offering so people, number one, understand this complex offering that you have, but two, connect with it on a more human level that then enables you to differentiate yourself from the other tech providers, cybersecurity providers out there. And, everything we've seen, storytelling is right at the heart of that. So working in the film business, beyond the relationships that you were able to develop with some of these stars, what did you learn from the storytelling front on how to communicate, now in your world, very complex messages to make them simple, emotional, and actionable?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think that I learned through that experience and through realizing that all of these people, again, that I idolized were also just people, that if you can go into any sort of engagement with a client or with a prospect or even with a partner, any sort of business engagement, just be a person. Don't be a salesperson always and try to push something on them. Listen to them, have conversations with them, tell them a little bit about your background. It makes you not only, I think, a little bit more vulnerable, but it humanizes you for these engagements that I have with these customers. And I realize that is something too that I think exists more in small to medium-sized businesses than it does in large businesses. When you're working with huge enterprise-sized companies, you have a procurement team and you have someone that's managing the department that you're selling into. And so you can have relationships with a few of those people, but there's so many steps that the sales cycle has to go through that you're not going to have a relationship with all of those people. And it's almost meant to, that process is almost meant to dehumanize whatever you're trying to sell and just make it a product at the lowest rate possible. Whereas when you work with smaller companies, and where I would have more reach in a smaller company, as where I probably wouldn't be working with the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, for example, I'd be working with someone in their procurement department. At a smaller company, you're getting all the way up to the executive level. And those people want to hear a story and they want to know about you. They want to know how I started Rhymetec. They want to know what my background is because it humanizes me to them. And they can also relate to that. I think a lot of the times that I made a choice to work with smaller customers was because I am a small customer. I was a small startup too. And I can relate to the customers better and tell them my story and listen to their story. And then we have a connection there because of that, versus me just trying to be a guy that's selling a product into them and they want to hear about my product. They want to work with someone who they trust and who they understand. And that comes with stories. And that comes with telling them about you and your background and how you got to where you are. And it makes that process a lot better.
Tell us a little bit about Rhymetec Cyber Solutions. What is your company? What do you do, and who do you do it for?
Sure. So I founded Rhymetec in 2015 after I worked. So I left film, and then I worked for a few years at another consulting company. And I ended up founding Rhymetec in 2015 after one of the contacts that I'd had for a while in tech. We did some work for them, and they said, "Hey, I want you to." They knew I was looking to start my own company, and we did a really good job with what we were doing, the services we were providing for them. And so they said, "Hey, I want you to take this opportunity. We're going to refer you into another customer of ours, one of our customers." This was a large law firm in New York, and they said, "But we want you to take this opportunity to go out on your own." And so they told me who the customer was. I went home and I did some research on it, and it turns out it was a huge, big name private equity firm. That their law firm was a big law firm in New York City. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a really great opportunity to kind of start my company out with this sort of well-named and well-branded private equity firm.
Who was it?
I don't know. I can't tell you that. We did security work for
You
them.
don't
So
have
I
it
have
on
to
your
keep
website,
Yes, I have to keep they're not one
Okay.
who let me put their logo on their website. They're too big.
Fair enough. I have those too.
Yeah, so we ended up doing, I ended up starting Rhymetec, and then we ended up kicking off our services by doing a penetration test which is essentially us trying to hack into your servers and your systems and then show you how we did it so that you can fix those holes before someone that's trying to steal from you would do that. And this was a big technology company and a big technology figurehead that we were working for. And we went in there and we were able to actually hack quite a few of their systems and services, which you wouldn't think we would be able to do based upon the amount of money that they had and the person who was a relatively big name in technology, whose private equity firm that was. And so that was good for us, bad for them. It kind of allowed us to then blow up and start working with other more high-end private equity firms and doing a lot of penetration testing and working in the kind of the financial space, working with hedge funds, working with big banks, more law firms, like companies like that in New York City. And I was really doing that work from around 2015 till around 2017. And then I remember thinking to myself, like, this is great. I like doing this, but I'm not really aligned like with these companies. I'm not a $1 billion hedge fund. At that point in time, I was a 5-person SaaS-based startup. And I want to work with customers that I have more in common with, right? I want to feel like I'm connected to my customers. I want to be able to tell them a story and have them understand that story because they also have a story as well, and we can relate on that. And I also realized that there was, with security, there was a lot of people that have a big understanding of how to manage security programs for these bigger companies that have a lot of on-prem architecture, so a lot of servers on site. There's not a lot of people that were doing a lot around SaaS-based security and people that are building web applications and companies that have their entire architecture in the cloud. And I realized that at that point in time, maybe the money wouldn't have been to focus on that because that wasn't where all of the work was. There's still majority of companies have their architecture based in the cloud. But I wanted to because I could relate to these customers and I had more in common with them. And I thought, this is the future. The cloud is definitely the way things are trending. And so even if the money isn't here right now, I feel like aligning myself with this is something I should do. And so we ended up working with several of these sort of SaaS-based startups, and I ended up building a whole CISO program around that and how we can build and manage InfoSec programs for SaaS-based companies. And that was in really like 2017, 2018, and we had, I'd say at that point, 9 customers, and now we have well over 300 customers that we have where we've built and we continue to maintain their InfoSec programs for them. So it was, in hindsight, it was a good move to kind of align with those customers. And it was something that I did it wasn't a financial driver that made me do that. It was a relationship driver. Like I could relate to these customers. And again, I could talk to them about my company and listen to them about their company and also understand their needs because I don't understand the needs of a hedge fund that has billions of dollars. I don't have billions of dollars. So that's not something that I can connect with them on. But a SaaS-based startup that's starting up, I have all the same sort of headaches that they have and understand their needs a little bit better. And so it was just a good fit.
So what's your go-to story that you share that helped you go from roughly 9 customers to over 300 now?
There's a couple, but I think there's one of the most interesting stories, and I'm growing my sales team out right now, and this is one of the stories that I always like to tell them in terms of you need to think differently about how you go after things. We all get a million emails from different vendors trying to sell us stuff all the time or stuff like that. And so and this also came from working in film. So I remember when I worked in film in New York City, you'll get things messengered to you in New York City at a film company, and it'll come in like a nice envelope and a messenger brought it there. So it's something that's probably pretty nice. If someone spent the money to messenger something to you, it's either a legal contract from a lawyer's office, which you can tell it is, or it's something like a gift or something that's really nice. And so when I was working at Rhymetec, and I was only working with the bigger companies at this point in time, but I remember after I would email these guys and try to get in front of them, and I wouldn't have a response after prospecting, they wouldn't have a response. I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I want to send these companies or the CTOs or CIOs of these companies a letter, but I also want them to like read it and not just have it come in the mail and throw it away as if it was any other junk mail. And so I wanted to messenger it to them. I was just starting my company at that point in time. I didn't have like the capital to be able to just go and throw thousands of dollars away on just messaging services to messenger a letter to everyone's office. So I would actually ride my bike around New York City. I'd write handwritten letters on really nice stock paper with a nice envelope. And sometimes I would attach like a little gift to it. Sometimes I'd give out like Google Homes or something like that, just like a really inexpensive gift like that. And I would ride my bikes to all of these offices, and then I would write it into the mailroom. So I appeared as if I was the messenger actually that was delivering this. And so they would get these sort of really nice handwritten letters on nice stock of paper and a gift sent to them, and it would come directly to them from the mailroom. So it would look like it came from a messenger. And then when you get that and you get a nice envelope, you open it and it resonated with the customers. They'd be like, oh, this person took the time to handwrite a letter, messenger it over to me, spend $20 on a Google Home, whatever. They sent that with it. And like, I would do that after a couple unanswered emails. And then I would email them again, like a day or two after they got that letter. And I'd say, hey, I'm just writing again. I know you got my letter. I know you've got my emails. Is there a chance that we can sync up and chat? And it worked 100% of the time. So I think like really thinking outside the box when you're doing sort of, especially when you're doing sales and working with customers in a way that's going to make them remember you is something I took from that. And I remember that when I would get things messengered to me in film, I was excited to open it because it's like when you open your new iPhone or something, you know what's in it, but it's really nice packaging. So you're like excited to kind of open it and see what it's going to look like. It was that same sort of feeling with when you get stuff messengered to you. And it was, like I said, I had 100% response rate on it. So it was something that worked. And it was great.
So you got the door opened and then you showed up. What was the origin story you would then follow with? So number one, you got their attention. Number two, they might be thinking, is this guy for real? He's gone out of his way. It's very creative and clever. Let's talk to him. But number three, what did you do to really build that trust with them? Once you were able to sit across from them, what stories did you share?
That's just it. And it's the humanization part of it, right? So it depends on the meeting and who I was meeting with. Some of these customers that I had messengered these letters to were existing customers that I had from way back when I was doing Microsoft licensing a long time ago. And so I still knew them. And so if that was the case, that I would meet with them and they would ask me what I'd been doing, and I'd tell them my whole backstory and talk to them about that. And then that trust is automatically there because they knew me before, they heard my story. And so they know that to trust me and to move forward with that. I think a lot of times with people that maybe hadn't heard of me before, they hadn't, like, getting in front of them, talking to people. And again, it's all about a story. People want to hear your background. I'm not saying that these were enterprise-sized customers, so I'm not saying that they would always buy from me because of my story, not because it still has to go through a procurement process and then they have to price it out and do whatever. But I would always receive a good response from that person, the head of that department that I was talking to. And they would 9 times out of 10, I think, really be like, listen, I understand this maybe came in more in price or whatever, but like this guy, we should work with this person. I can relate to him. He came here. He said he was going to do what he's going to do, which is show up. And he's a nice, normal person. I think a lot of times when someone is a salesperson and they're just trying to push things on you rather than just talk to you and have conversations, people can see through that. And so it's all about giving people a story, talking to them just like you would talk to anyone else and making them feel at ease.
And then how do you because your world is quite complex, so people don't always completely understand the ramifications of cybersecurity and what, whistles and bells and bolts you're going to bring in to help, keep them safe and so forth. How do you make that complex communication simple for them to digest using storytelling so that they can feel it? Because I would imagine a lot of people in your world come at it from a very logical, reasoned approach, but that is not always what sells. It's the emotional side of it. So how do you make that complex sale simple with your storytelling?
It really depends on who I'm speaking to and at that point in time, who I'm talking to. I don't know that I have one sort of standard story that I go into each one of my sales engagements with. And it really depends on if, again, I know that person or the background that I've had with them. But typically I found that everyone wants to hear my story of Rhymetec, which is kind of what I gave you a little bit ago, how I started it and did pen testing, then switched over to SaaS-based customers. Everyone likes to hear how I got to where I am today. Even more so, I think, than they want to hear what I'm pitching to them, right? They want to hear more about the company, who I am, what Rhymetec does, how I took this company from frankly just myself to a 30-person company and how we've grown. I think when people understand that I started also Rhymetec with nothing. We're a bootstrap company, so we didn't start with a ton of funding or anything like that. And so when people see that you start with very little and you've grown to something that's much bigger, it's less about this, what you're at. I mean, obviously they want to know what you're selling, but the proof is in the fact of our growth, because they understand that, hey, if all of these other companies are willing to do business with them, and if they've taken off this quick, and this guy's a nice guy that's trustworthy and like working with a lot of other companies, then they will be they're more incentivized to work with you, and they're usually going to want to work with you just based on the fact that I'm not coming there just pitching a product and then walking out of there and they're like, okay, well, what does this cost? What are the other products cost? Let's see what's the best price. They're like, they understand that I built something from nothing, and they respect that, and they respect the story behind that typically.
Oh, that's very cool. So what's next for you in your company? What are you doing, and how are you using storytelling to grow it?
Yeah, so right now we're primarily a services-based company. We've grown. We have a ton of customers now, and I'm looking really to kind of automate a lot that we're doing and kind of bring in some automation to our overall processes, but really to continue to grow in the SaaS space. And I think like really where I'm at now, I'm growing my sales team too as well. And this is something primarily sales up to this point has been mostly on my shoulders, but I've hired some account executives and some sales leadership, and I'm working with them on teaching them how to be less of a robot in sales and more of a human, and open up and talk to people. And more important than talk, listen to people. Because if you just listen to people and answer their questions with honestly, and then that's going to get you more far than it is to just go in and be like, hey, we do X, Y, and Z. Here's the price that we do X, Y, and Z for. Like, do you want to buy it? Because maybe they will, but they're certainly going to bid you out at that point, and it's going to be a margins sort of thing. But it's really like just teaching everyone to, I remember this goes back to when I first started in sales, teaching them to just not be nervous and to have conversations with people and to treat them like people and not like a customer, if that's a good way to frame it. And that's going to get you much further. Maybe the sales cycle will be a little longer because you're getting to know them and they're getting to know you, but it's going to be a much more secure sale. And then if any problems ever rise down the line, they're going to feel like they can come to you and they can talk to you about it rather than just kind of cutting you off because of an issue, because they realize that you're going to be receptive to that. So really working internally to kind of automate a lot of things that we're doing here. But in terms of the storytelling aspect of that, I'm now trying to work with my sales team to get them to sort of mirror that storytelling approach when they go out in the field and when they're meeting with prospects and customers.
Your experience in the film world, having to babysit all these celebrities, how has that played over to even your own approach to customer service? I mean, do you teach your sales team every time you're sitting across from someone, picture them as a celebrity that deserves all of that attention, and we are the ones to give them that attention around their cybersecurity?
I think, well, definitely empathy, right? So, I mean, we work in the technology industry. There's been a lot of changes with tech and pricing that people are looking for different pricing models because their companies maybe didn't have the funding that they had before. So listening to everyone, again, listening to them and understanding where they're coming from, and being empathetic to problems like that, I think is really one of the biggest things that I'm dealing with. Where
can people learn more about you and your company?
They can just go to our website. It's Rhymetec.com, which is RHYMETEC.com. Yeah, and check out what we have to offer. We're doing a lot right now, and growing quickly. So it's an exciting time.
Well, that's awesome, Justin. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you too. It was great chatting with you.
Yeah, fun story. This whole intersection of the tech world with the film world and how it all led to you in cybersecurity, I think is really an interesting journey. And no wonder people are excited about your origin story. And I couldn't agree with you more that people don't care about your offering, do they? They really care about the outcome. Outcome trumps offering every single time because they just assume you're good at what you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the business. You wouldn't be growing. So don't be leading with the tech and the logic and the reason. As you say, sit down and lead with the person. Humanize that B2B marketing to business to human, which has become such a popular phrase. And it sounds like you do a really tremendous job with it there.
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm always trying to focus on. So, yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening to this edition. If you like what you heard, share it with your world. A way to take the cold, inhumane, tech-driven world and humanize it so that you're actually connecting with that person sitting across from you. And you don't have to be in the tech world. You could be in any company, any industry that really champions brilliance and logic and reason. Remember that when you're sitting with that person across from you, they care about the emotion of what you're selling. They want to know the outcome. How can you help them get what they want? They honestly really don't care so much about you and your offering. Your job is to make them care about you by connecting with them and sharing your personal stories. And I think Justin's given you some great ideas today on how to do that. If I can be a service to you and help your sales and marketing team really understand how to tell their stories using our 3 proven frameworks, from the and, but, therefore, to the 5 primal elements of a short story for big impact, to, of course, our number 1 seller, the 10 steps of the story cycle system, then come on over and check it out at businessofstory.com. And if you have not yet taken your online course, check out businessofstory.com/ABT and start putting the 3 forces of story to work for you in your sales and marketing and all of your leadership communications. And I hope you'll come on back next Monday when we'll have another story artist right here for you like Justin. And until then, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make sure that one's epic. Thanks so much for listening.